Hello everyone! Today I wanted to do my March wrap-up. So here are the books that I read in March. So I actually did okay. I read about 9 books, so half of them audio, half of them real physical books. The first one I want to talk about is I did Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I had watched the top 10 books in the United States, and Outlander kept being on all these lists, so I was like, okay, I have to read Outlander. I had to skip a couple parts, and then some parts kind of like dragged out too long, but overall it was an interesting listen. It's almost 30 CDs that I listened to in my car. So it took me about 3 months to listen to the whole thing. This is kind of like a fantasy story. This girl from the 1940s goes back in time to the 1700s, Scotland, and then what happens? There's warring clans people. She ends up marrying one of the Scottish guys. So it's a very epic books. So that was the first one. The next ones I also did on audio. I did another book on the top 10 books, or America's Top 10 Reads, and it's The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And a lot of people read this story in high school, but I have actually never sat down and read it. So this is a story about Gatsby. He is in love with a girl named Daisy, and just the whole book is pretty small, and it takes place with over maybe 2 months of these parties and stuff. And this kind of this outsider looking in and what happens between Gatsby and this girl. It was written pretty well, I thought, and it was pretty entertaining. So F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. The next one, or the next couple, I should say, are thrillers. So Before She Knew Him by Peter Swanson. There. This is a thriller. It is about a family, a lady, and they get neighbors, and the new neighbors, she starts to suspect one of them of murder, and she kind of has some psychological issues, so no one believes her. So it's this whole what happens. The next one is An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pecknan. They wrote The Wife Between Us, and I read that one, and it was entertaining. So I actually liked Anonymous Girl better than The Wife Between Us. And this is a story about a girl. She's kind of hard up on money, so she decides to do this kind of test that this doctor is doing for some money. And one day the doctor, and she starts just noticing these weird things during these tests, answering questions. And she finally meets the doctor who's conducting the test, and the doctor's like, you know what, you are a very interesting person. If you will devote your whole time to this, I'll give you even more money. So she's like, okay, I'll do it. And it's just this kind of, she starts this whole kind of spiral of who's actually analyzing who. So it was a pretty good one. So Anonymous Girl. Another one I read on audio was When It's Real by Erin Watt. And this is a story of a girl who agrees to be the fake girlfriend of a rock star. And of course they fall in love. And it was cute. It was not as entertaining as some of other Erin Watt's books, but still pretty entertaining. I also did Comics Will Break Your Heart by Faith Erin Hicks. This is kind of a Romeo and Juliet set with a comic, but instead of like two rival families, these two people who, these two comic book kind of rivals, families, like they do comic books, and it's kind of just full of a lot of nerdy stuff that I really liked. I would probably give this maybe a 3 or 4 stars out of 5. The writing does get kind of long a couple times, but still very entertaining. So if you like nerdy stuff, you'll like this book. Another one I read was Evermore by Sarah Holland, and this is I want to say continuation or the second part of a duology from Everless. And I did not enjoy this one as much as I enjoyed the first book in the series, or duology, whatever it is. The first one was more clear-cut. This is kind of a world where if you have, your blood can be made into money. So for a little piece of bread, you have to give a couple drops of blood, and that's like how much a piece of bread costs. And that's like 2 minutes from your life. If you need to buy something bigger, you have to give more blood, and that's like a year of your life. The first book ended where the main character, Jules, she is escaping from Everless, and this one I almost felt was a little more convoluted. Just there was so much going on, and she can like stop time, but she's going here while she stopped time, and stuff like that. So it was still pretty good. Like if you like the first book, you'll kind of want to read this book to find out what happens. But I just found it a little just not as entertaining as the first book. I would probably give this a 2 or 3 stars. And the last 2 books I did were arcs, and the first one is You'd Be Mine by Erin Hahn. This is kind of reminiscent of the book I just mentioned. This girl, she agrees to go on tour with kind of a rock star, and it's just kind of the life on the road and singing. There's lots of allusions to Johnny Cash and June Cash and just kind of some of their songs. So I did like that about the book. Some people said that it was kind of like if you like Casey West books, you'll like this. I can see why, but they're slightly more darker than Casey. This book is slightly more darker than Casey West books because there's lots more drinking and just a lot of other stuff. But it was still pretty entertaining. I think the parts that I liked best were when there was the allusions to Johnny Cash and June Cash and their songs. So that's that. I believe this is coming out in a couple days on April 2nd. So there's that. And then the last one is also on April 2nd. It's coming out. It is Tracy Jarvis Graves, The Girl He Used to Know. This is a story about 2 people who dated in college, and then they split, and then they kind of reconnect like 10 years later. I thought it might be kind of like Persuasion, and there's like elements of like, oh, you know, long lost love. But the book kind of goes back and forth between the times they were in college and then like nowadays. And then there's like the last third of the book, kind of there's a twist that I didn't see coming, so that kind of pulls you in. Overall, I thought it was a pretty entertaining read. The character, the main character of Annika, she is on the autism spectrum, so it was kind of interesting to read another book of just perspective of that and just like how she sees the world and how she kind of communicates and things like that. So there is that book. So those are the books that I read in March. Hope you like this little video. Like and subscribe, and I will talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.